Hi, this is John Park, and here's another question I get regarding self-directed IRAs and 401ks from people. A typical question might come in is, what is the difference between a traditional self-directed custodian and a true self-directed IRA 401k where I can act in my own best interest? That's a great question because there's a lot of people out there who, I'm just going to use a real story. I get phone calls all the time from people who say, well, doesn't my money have to be with some third party and they take care of all this stuff? They make sure that I'm following all the rules and they're doing it the right way for me. The answer to that simply is no. Now, that doesn't mean that they don't serve a purpose if a person chooses to use one of these custodians, because they do exercise certain things that does benefit the person, but it really gets down to a philosophical choice of, do you want somebody to basically take control over your money, where you have to, I call it babysitting, where you're actually having to go back and ask them to do things, to cut checks for certain investments, to pay certain bills with a self-directed IRA or 401k, or do you want to have that control? Again, the question comes up is, well, can I? And the answer to that is absolutely yes. So let's use a typical example. Let's say we have John here. I'll pick on myself. Let's say we have John here, and he wants to transfer from an old 401k account $250,000 into a new self-directed IRA or 401k. Now, when John calls that custodian and says, what's all involved here? They're going to obviously give him the song and dance about what their services are, what value they bring to that client. But let's just kind of use simple layman's terms. Many of these custodians or administrators, you got to remember, they're making money too. And how are they making money? One is when you open up an account, you have to pay an account opening fee to set up the account. Okay, that's understandable. Two, what most of these companies have, custodians and administrators have what they call balance fees. So you're paying a certain amount to them. It's might look like a very small percentage, but it adds up quite a bit over a period of time, where you're actually paying a percentage of the assets in your account, either in cash, property, etc., and they're getting that money. Third thing is what I call being transactionalized to death, or transaction fees. These are things where if you have to have a check sent somewhere, well, you got to pay for that. If you're receiving something from somewhere, there's going to be a transaction fee for that. If you purchase an asset within your IRA or your 401k, typically there's a charge for that. So like a real life story with one of the custodians out there is they may have like a $250 per asset fee. Well, now if you go out and buy some real estate, buy a tax lien, maybe even buy some stocks or some mutual funds as part of your diversified portfolio, you have to pay $250 per asset for that. Can you see the picture here as that starts adding up? Bottom line is regardless whether the fees are cheap or expensive, there's a philosophical approach to this as well. Do you feel like you have to have somebody who writes out the check? Because remember, many times when you're making investments, especially real estate investments, there's a time sensitivity to it. If you have to go ask a third party for permission to take money from your self-directed IRA or 401k account just to put it down on that piece of real estate, what are you potentially losing? Time and the opportunity to be competitive with the investment choice that you want to make. If you actually had checkbook control of those assets, where you could actually write out the check and you're serving as the fiduciary of your own account, isn't that of more interest to you? Bottom line is that takes us now into the ability to self-direct your own assets. I'm going to use a term here that I like to use. It may not make sense to everybody, it may make sense to some, but it's called a fiduciary. You are allowed under IRS regulations, as long as your plan is structured correctly, to be your own fiduciary for your own retirement account. This means that you are acting in the best interests of your retirement plan. Now, there are certain IRS rules, obviously, that come into play. One right off the bat, you can't be involved with self-dealing, where you're personally benefiting here and now before you take distributions from your retirement plan down the road. But you can't do things like self-dealing, you can't invest with disqualified individuals, you can't enter into prohibited transactions. And these are things we're going to talk about more. But bottom line is just the general concept and the general philosophical approach I'm taking here is, if structured correctly, you can be the fiduciary of your own account because you are going to be acting in the best interests of that retirement account, which means that you can have checkbook control, which means that you can write out the checks for investments. You don't have to go to a third party. You don't have to pay separate fees. You don't have to pay balance fees. You don't have to be transactionalized to death. So, that's my little spiel today on the differences between a traditional self-directed custodian and then what you may want to be looking at is a true self-directed IRA or 401k where you or a trustee of your choice serves as the fiduciary for your plan. With that, I want to thank you for your time. Best of luck with your wealth building in 2009. And if you're interested in this topic or other videos that I have related to self-directed IRAs and 401ks, just click the link below and enjoy. Thanks.